What's up, y'all? It's Taylor Knighton, and this is Resistance is Futile, where we build the capacity to hold the tension of life's circumstances through our faith walks in Christ. Now, I know it's been a minute. We got a lot to talk about, but I'm back, I'm better, I'm stronger, I'm wiser. So let's talk. It has been a long time. The last time we spoke, the last time I connected with you all, I had shared a quick story about how I was ending up in the UK, how the Lord completely transformed my life, picked me up from New Jersey, and moved me into Brighton, England. It's been a whirlwind since then, if I'm honest. So much has happened. I have grown so much. I have learned so much. And I'm ready to share. I am someone who is a big advocate for speaking when you have something valuable to say. And so now's the time. 7 months has gone by. And so now I'm just ready to share, ready to open up and be transparent about and, honest about the experiences that I've gone through. A lot has been learned, a lot has been processed, and I am looking forward to continuing to tell my story. Now, I started Resistance is Futile 3 years ago, which is insane to me. I can't believe that I started this YouTube channel 3 years ago. And I will link the video in which I am talking to you and sharing with you about why I have this vlog. Back then, it was because I wanted to face the hard truths about myself. I wanted to face the hard things about life because I had been running. Now, I know you guys know Star Trek, and you might hear Resistance is Futile and think, oh, that comes from that movie. However, the first time I encountered it was in a song by Jill Scott called Running Away. And sidebar, aren't we happy that we have some new Jill Scott music? But anyways, I first heard that saying, resistance is futile, through Running Away. And the song is so good, it resonated so deeply, and still to this day, as I go back and listen, it still holds so much weight to me. Now, this is about building the capacity. Capacity is a word that amongst my family, my mother, my sister, and some friends, is that we learn that we don't all have the capacity for the same kinds of things. And it's important that we build the capacity to hold the tension of life circumstances. Now, what are life circumstances? It could be a big move, like moving from New Jersey to England. It could be a breakup. It could be transitioning from singlehood to motherhood. There's so many things. There's so many tensions in life. Sometimes there's just relational tension. And we have to have the capacity to do this. And the only way we gain that capacity, at least which I've learned, is to know God and to trust Him in all of His ways and in all of His plans. So as I hope that you have seen in the new intro, who's this? TTT. There are photos of me as a child, and you will see photos of me smiling, happy, a kid, youthful, really a toddler in those pictures. But then eventually, we come across this photo of me, and it looks like I'm frowning. It looks like I'm sad. And some might look at that and say, this is just an emotional preteen. Probably was like 11 or 12 in that picture. But I remember that time in my life. I remember that time very, very specifically because I was depressed at that age. I had very low self-esteem. I did not believe in myself. I did not believe I was worthy. And although I was in church, I had no real understanding of what God's love meant for me specifically. No idea. So what we're going to talk about today is distortion. Can you recall a time where the enemy was distorting your view of yourself? That time and that picture in my preteens, I know for a fact, looking back, that the enemy was lying to me day in and day out. And I didn't know how to fight him. I didn't know how to fight the lies, to fight the torment of feeling ugly, of feeling not worthy, of feeling underappreciated, undervalued, overlooked. I had no concept of how to deter myself from believing these things. They were really planted in me at such a young age that it just kind of felt like it was a part of who I was and who I was going to become. I was trapped in a battle of comparison for a very long time. I began to create an idol. And at the time, the idol that I created was an incorrect, hyper-romanticized version of what I thought love was. Now, if you hear what I just said, which is that the enemy plants seeds of distortion from the time I was in my preteens, and then from there, I jumped into a trap of comparison and then built up an idol. But let's think about the Bible for a moment. We know that in the beginning there was creation. And after creation, we know that there was the fall. And the fall happened because of distortion from the enemy to Eve. The enemy said to her, "Did God really say that you can't eat from that tree?" Distortion immediately. And what do we have after the fall story? We get the story of Cain and Abel. Now, this is the first instance in which we would see jealousy. From the time I was created, very young in my age, the enemy planted distortion in me. And then after I believed that distortion, I bit the apple. I believed it to be true. And then eventually comparison came along. And that just caused me to stay stuck in such a dark place for so long, constantly trying to prove myself, constantly not knowing who I was because I wasn't looking for me. I was looking to be validated, to be seen by others, and by others who could not actually give me worth. I romanticized what it would be like to be in a relationship. Now, I was a kid, I was a preteen, and this is when we start to develop ideas about love and romance and partnership from what little we know. But this is the vivid memory that I have at this young age in that picture that I showed you. Actually, I remember saying a prayer even before I had a real relationship with the Lord. I remembered praying silently, and I was actually crying in bed. And I said, "Lord, please let me experience loved. I want to be loved, and I want to love in return." Now, clearly, I had no idea what I was praying. I must have had heard somebody say this in like a movie or something, like, "Lord, I want to love and be loved." What kind of 13-year-old is saying this? I can remember that prayer. I now know how much and what the Lord has been doing in my life. It hasn't been clear to me. For so long, held on to that prayer, believing that the Lord would not satisfy it because I wasn't seeing him satisfy it. I wasn't seeing him answer. Because I remembered it at such a young age, I would wait for the years for the Lord to send me someone. But he did send me someone. He sent me himself. And that is a truth that takes so long sometimes to really understand. We are often looking for love externally, and it is only a gap, an emptiness, a filling that can be fulfilled truly by the one and only God, by Jesus Christ. Years I waited to understand this. Years I was waiting, years, until eventually the Lord said, no, what you are seeking is me. I love it. I love that I have this story, that I have this memory of saying that prayer, expecting that I was going to receive something else, but the Lord gave me him, something so much more valuable, so much more valuable. And I still am waiting for him to send me a partner. But I know that because I had built up an idol in that partnership, there are things that he has to unteach me, teach me about his love, and then unteach me about my expectations around it. And so we've got a lot to talk about. And this story, this dream, this prayer, it's going to be around for a long time. It'll come up time and time again in my episodes because it is so foundational to my story. It is so foundational to who I am becoming and what the Lord wants me to do in this season. Now, some people will hear the story that I just shared about my youth, about that little girl that you saw in the picture. And some people will say, well, where and who did the Lord use to make her feel or to get her to believe how unworthy she was? I can recall a time where I wanted to place blame. I wanted to place blame on people who I thought were contributing to the pain in which I felt in my youth. But one of the things that the Lord has shown me, one of the stories that I have read and read time and time again, is the story where Jesus heals the blind man. Now let's open our Bibles. Now this story can be found in John 9, verses 1 through 7, and I'm going to read it. It says, as he went along, he saw a blind man from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. My pain as a preteen into my teens, all of that was for the glory of God. All of it was so that I could share with you so that the Lord would get the glory. And he says, it is no one's fault. And I had to accept that and believe it with my heart to know that the Lord used these circumstances because we know, and we have all heard the saying, what the enemy uses for evil, God turns for his good. He used distortion and he thought that I would stay. But little did he know that he was defeated. He was defeated already in my life and continues to be defeated. And so I'm going to continue to do the Lord's work, that the Lord gets the glory out of my life, because I didn't go through those things. I didn't experience self-doubt, loneliness, lack of belief in myself, lack of belief in anything. I didn't go through that for no reason. There is a reason for it, and it's because I want God to get the glory. So we'll wrap up here. Thank you for listening. And this is just the beginning of Resistance is Futile again, as I'm back. And I'm so happy that you guys all listened and watched. And there is much more to come. Much, much more to come.